Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And it's not about being right and being happy. It's, do you want to be right or do you want to be safe? Because most people don't feel safe. Most people don't feel safe expressing themselves. Most people don't feel safe in a state of activation in that way. And I think that being able to check in and say, okay, we don't feel safe here. What do I need to feel safe in this moment?
You're listening to the Get a Helmet podcast, currently illuminating the fullness of the human expression. Hi, I'm Caroline Aylward, a filmmaker and yoga and meditation teacher focused on the power of human connection, story, and authenticity. The Get a Helmet podcast started when I was living in my grandfather's spare bedroom with one microphone and an intense passion for storytelling. To me, conversation is one of life's great adventures. It highlights who we are as individuals, while at the same time revealing our deeply human similarities. I'm curious to learn what makes us unique, but also what unites us and connects us at the heart. On this show, we hear stories of resilience, intuition, growth, perseverance, love, and so much more. So what brings you joy and makes you feel safe? What grounds you down and makes you feel good, truly deep down in your bones good? Because life is tough. What's your helmet? Hello, gorgeous beauties. I hope everyone out there listening is doing so well, and I am so thrilled to share this episode with you today. Welcome to the Get a Helmet podcast. My name is Caroline. If this is your first time joining, we are on a roll right now with some really potent interviews with some very powerful women. So this is like 3 in a row for getting back into the swing of interviews. We've been on a mindful mini-sode spree as of late, so I'm so thrilled to share these beautiful conversations with you. And thank you so much to Victoria of Root and Branch, who you're going to be hearing from today on the show. She is an embodiment alchemist. She's a mentor for extraordinary women. So she works one-on-one with women to help them with ease and energetics and embodiment and nervous system regulation and so much more. This conversation, I'm telling you right now, you're going to want to take a pen out and take some notes for this one. We go deep in this one, we go deep into relationships, which I was not even expecting. She shares so much about her personal relationship with her fiance and instances and conversations that they've had where she's felt activated and triggered and how she's been able to move through that and the mirroring that takes place within relationship. And that's, relationship in a romantic sense, but just relationship to everything, to money, to your business, to your friends, to your food, to your body. And so we really go in on that and also discuss embodiment in general, because that word is just like truly thrown around so much right now, which, is good. And we talk about this in this conversation, but what does that mean? What does that feel like? What does that look like? And we actually discuss a lot about internal energetic polarity. So the divine masculine and divine feminine energies that lives within all of us and approaching situations, conversations, really anything through that lens. And Victoria shares a lot about her personal experiences with that and how that's been coming up a lot for her lately. And it really is such a beautiful conversation. Like we started talking and it was like thunderstormy energy and it started to rain and the birds were going crazy. And then as the conversation was kind of rounding out, the sun was shining and it was just this like beautiful, like energetic release. And I could tell that we were kind of shaking things up in the universe with this conversation. So we talk about trusting yourself and really being able to like decipher the difference between intuition and fear, which has been a big one in my life over the past like 2 years or so. And I love digging into that question because it can be so confusing. It can be so confusing, especially in the realm of relationships. And so get ready. This is really, really good. And I'm so thrilled to be able to share this with you. Victoria tells a lot of beautiful stories and so beautifully owns her own story. So sit back and relax for this one. And for those of you listening who have not yet joined the circle, my private membership, we have got another meetup this week happening on Friday for the new moon. So please come join us. The circle is a space for women to come together, to heal, to dance, to breathe, to feel empowered, to move through that anxiety and that self-doubt that's still living in your system. and to really find that level of connection, community, and accountability. And so as of right now, it's $14 a month. And so if you become a founding member by locking in that price, then it stays at $14 a month for you. And that price will inevitably go up. But I really wanted to open this up for people who have maybe wanted to work with me in a one-on-one container, but didn't necessarily feel that it was like a financial reality for them in that moment. So this is a really gorgeous opportunity. And I'm so grateful to be able to have this offering now where you can connect and you can go deep and you can have that consistency in your practice where we're meeting twice a month. We're doing the full moon dance rituals and we're doing our new moon circles as well. And so I am such an advocate for gentle, consistent practice and talk about this a lot on this podcast and within the circle and within, my private mentorship container. But if struggling with anxiety or struggling with limiting beliefs and self-doubt and judgment and hating your body, really, truly anything is something that you're moving through, consistent, daily, gentle, aligned practice is going to move the needle for you. And there's really just no way around that. And that's why within the circle, you get access to a library of healing practices. So think about it as like a little Netflix for somatic movement practices, energy work, breath work, meditations, all of the things. And I'm really turning to the members of the circle to be like, tell me what you want, So you can just wake up and press play on whatever it is that's calling you within that healing library, and boom, you've done your practice for the day. So I love that. Because every single day feels different for me. Like one day I'm like, oh man, I want like a 30-minute juicy meditation. And then the next day I'm like, I need like a 5-minute breathwork practice because I'm feeling like ungrounded and I need to ground into my parasympathetic nervous system and into my root chakra. And so breath, more of a somatic practice, is feeling aligned. And then I've got the somatic movement practices, which are like truly a party. And you just plug those headphones into your ears, preferably like some Bluetooth ones so that you can really jam out. You listen to the sound of my voice, you turn that all the way up, and you are just dancing and moving your body for, I think we've got some short ones, we've got some long ones, but there's just so much within the circle. So I'm so thrilled to offer this, and I would love to have you be a part of it. I'll drop the link to join within the show notes here. Come join us, and we're going to meet up on Friday. That is July 9th, and then we meet up twice a month. So hell yes. And also, almost forgot to mention this, as a member of the circle, you also get 15% off of all of the Get a Helmet offerings. That includes my private mentorship. That includes any of my group coaching or course offerings. It includes everything. So anything that I will be creating and putting out into the world, you will get 15% off of that, which is pretty cool if I do say so myself. So get ready for this juicy conversation, and I will see you on the other side. Listen, I love drinking a little wine, or in my case, mezcal cocktails, kicking back and hanging out with my girls. I love to have a good time. But the reality is, alcohol amplifies anxiety. Alcohol and the nervous system, not the best of friends. This precious and divine nervous system of mine loves and craves a break from alcohol, and I take them frequently. When I discover fun, calming beverages to drink in its place, I get really excited, especially when it has CBD and adaptogenic herbs. My nervous system does a little happy dance. So we're not just talking about pouring some kombucha in a wine glass with some ice, even though that's my jam. We're not just talking about taking some CBD, but this beverage called Recess combines calming hemp CBD and balancing adaptogens to keep you calm, cool, and collected. So in the Recess beverages, we've got hemp, which for me is like calms the mind and centers the body immediately. We've got American ginseng, L-theanine, which I super duper love as well, eases tension, brightens the mood. You can find L-theanine in green tea as well, and I always say this, it feels like pressing the reset button. And it also has lemon balm. The Recess beverages are low in sugar and they're organic. The flavors are so delicious. We've got black cherry, pomegranate hibiscus, blood orange, peach ginger, coconut lime, blackberry chai. Yes to all, please. If you head on over to takearecess.com and enter the code GETAHELMET, all caps, you will get 15% off of beverages, apparel, and subscriptions. They actually have really cute apparel and clothes. What an awesome brand. Head on over to their website, takearecess, recess.com, and enter the code GETAHELMET, GETAHELMET, for 15% off. And enjoy! The first time I stepped into a therapist's office was during my parents' extremely difficult divorce. It felt forced, and I was super resistant to it. It was awful, and it really jaded my view of therapy. Later in life, when I started having paralyzing panic attacks and anxiety, my boss at work recommended I go see her therapist. At this point, I was desperate, so I set up an appointment. I can't even begin to describe how much therapy helped me at the beginning of my healing journey. I encourage everyone who works with me or who enrolls in one of my programs to do this work in conjunction with a therapist. And let's be real, everything is happening virtually these days, from the comforts of our own homes. Enter BetterHelp. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, it's professional counseling done securely online that is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, and you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. So you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as with traditional therapy. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. The good news is, BetterHelp is offering 10% off your first month using the code GETAHELMET when you go to betterhelp.com/getahelmet. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/getahelmet, using the code GETAHELMET for 10% off your first month. Your mental health deserves to be nourished. Yeah, so I mean, gosh, there's so much like, I was just immediately drawn, like when I saw you on the Natalia Benson thing and you were speaking my language, so I was like, I gotta reach out. And I love that that happened to you in a few other instances with other people that were on that exact thing. And, embodiment and feeling good in your own skin and being very, very like true to who you are, like exactly what you were just saying, like getting very clear on the internal calls and pulls and listening to them, because it's one thing to hear them, it's another thing to actually be obedient to them. And so what's been your recent experience with that, like feeling called to be quiet and being like, but this is going against what I'm supposed to be doing, right? I should be showing up
Yeah.
and I should be creating and I should be putting offers out there, but it's like, hold on, I need to be in my body right now and just getting clear on what it is I want to offer. Like, what's that been like for you?
So I love that you asked that because I've had several very kind of intense experiences with that. One even as recently as yesterday. So just like a quick example of it, um, I have some friends that are very well versed in crypto, and I was like, I'm interested in just like exploring this and moving into an entrepreneurial space, right? Like being an entrepreneur, right? You take greater than usual risks. And a huge piece of that was trusting myself um, to create something where I could be self sufficient and sustained. And that felt a little bit terrifying at first. And I've done a lot of work around really kind of, healing my understandings of like working with money. But this one incident yesterday, um, we had gotten together to kind of like invest in this one specific thing. And I went to make the transfers and I made like, a few $100s I transferred to something, and it wasn't going through. Like it was just not lining up with the universe. And I was like, okay, so it was telling me I had to wait till like, 2 weeks out to like be able to move something around. And I was like feeling this sense of like disappointment, failure. It was crazy how quickly an incident, which in the grand scheme of things is like not a big deal. My body was like, you look so naive. You look completely stupid. Of course, you're the only one that this isn't going to work for right now. You don't have enough money to do this all over again. Like, you're the one that's left out. And my nervous system, like my body just started kind of like shaking. And it was different than an anxiety shake. It was more of this like internal fear. Like my nervous system was just like, do you actually trust what you're doing right now? You look foolish. So it was the negative self-speak. It was just my entire body communicating with me. My brain kind of blanked out. Um, and I just made this really bold move, and I reinvested the same chunk of a few $100s to make it work. And my initial investment, I just moved somewhere else. So I kind of doubled it right there in the moment. And I had to take a second and like step away from the training and go over to the mirror and just sit with myself and like look myself in the eye and be like, babe, I trust you. Like, it's gonna be okay. I know you're trying to protect me. I know this feels scary. I know this goes against everything that we understand. But it's okay. And it's gonna work out and it's gonna be just fine. And I moved through it. And in the past, that would have been something where the mental spiral would have just completely dampened my day. Um, and I was able to just like really move through that really fluidly without any fear. And I think that that's on the tail end of having a few weeks where, I'm getting really deep into understanding like internally sourced polarity of this inner yin and yang. Um, no reference to anyone who identifies as male, female, non-binary, like nothing to do with that, but just internally, there's a part of me that wants to create and express and feel. And then there's another part of me that needs to kind of create safety and lead and have enough depth to really hold all of that creation. And what I was realizing is this creative part of me, this trusting, this part that wanted to really kind of surrender to everything that I'm doing and believing in and shifting these belief systems was not feeling completely safe with my inner masculine, with my inner yang. And I had to just really reevaluate over the past few weeks to get extremely clear. um, I had to get really clear over the past few weeks to really allow myself to really reevaluate like my inner integrity, my vision, my purpose, like what I'm doing. Like, am I someone that follows through on my word? Do I keep my word to myself? Do I really show up for me the way that I say I will? Like, um, is my word valid? And if it's not valid with me, it's not going to be valid with anybody that I'm serving. So I had to kind of pull back in the past few weeks and just really dive internally and also make some very different type of investments in the sense that I've been working with and just exploring working with other mentors in teachings that are just like very different for me that I've definitely felt more resistance to. And it's kind of opening up a softer part of me that's been hard to access, And I just finished a training called Bold Embodiment. And, I think we live in this 3D world and everything that we take in comes through our five senses. Our internal world is a completely different dimension. And if we were to think that every emotion we have is a sense of its own, how well versed would we be in taking in information through these energetic senses internally? And it's not, and it's terrifying. And we will often run from that internal experience, and put a lot of pressure on the external world and other things and other people, to kind of satisfy or satiate or calm that down. So I've just noticed like myself and so many people are just running around like, partially traumatized with like a really dysregulated nervous system. And giving that space has felt really unnatural, but it's been super powerful to just like allow the opportunity to recalibrate.
So beautiful. As you're speaking, it's like the birds outside are going crazy and like it's starting to rain and thunderstorm and I'm just like, okay.
I
But
love it.
so many things that you're saying I want to touch on. It's honoring that call to be still, and what's really come through for me in the past like year and a half honestly is like being able to distinguish the difference between feeling fear in your body and feeling your intuition. Like, what in that moment for you when you were feeling that like old like nervous system programming and story and like the body starting to shake and stuff is like, oh, but I can keep going through that and I can make a decision. I can trust myself that this is good for me versus letting that fear shut you down and be like, that's a red light versus, just move through the fear and get there. It's sometimes so hard to be able to distinguish, is this my fear or is this my intuition? In
Yeah,
business, in relationships, in all of the things. And so has that come up for you in your life? And, how have you been able to like distinguish the difference between the two?
definitely. So for me, if something is like my programming, my coding, coming up in fear, there's usually an intense emotional charge with it. There's a lot of emotional charge. Intuition for me is just kind of this deep, calm knowing. And it's something that happens like deeper in my body. Um, I usually get like my internal yes in like my sacral, in my solar plexus. Um, and when I get a no, it feels like something's kind of like blocking my throat. Like I can't speak this into the world. And that for me is kind of like a just regulating in my body and feeling that. Um, and when and then what I would also say for me with intuition is there can still be emotion, there can still be fear. Like yesterday, my nervous system's like rattling like a tambourine,
Yeah.
but there was this part of me that was just like, I understand that my nervous system is literally going through a change right now. Like I feel it changing in me, um, to a totally different kind of software. Like it's like it's just downloading a different kind of software, and it's like turbulence in a plane, and it's like, it's all right. Like this can land. It's all right. So the way that I've been able to really discern that and work through those things is something that's really important for me in my work, is really working in emotional intelligence, which for me, in the way that I really define it, and I speak and teach about it, is that despite my emotions, despite emotional charge, I can still clearly communicate. I
Mm.
can still make decisions with a level of discernment that's not being influenced by my emotions, and that I have the capacity to actually process the emotion as it comes without distorting it. So having that in a toolkit to be able to walk through life, in business, in personal life, in relationships, in anything, is such an invaluable tool, because it actually allows me to really drink in the fact, for the most part, that my mind is always going to distort my emotions. My
Yeah.
mind is always going to distort my emotions. And I have a history of being an addict. Like gratefully, like I'm a sober addict today. um and what I can say is that like that whole journey, even at that point in my life, and it's something I speak openly about, um because I think it's just really important for people to just speak about it like without any shame, which I have none of, in that regard. And it was all about distortion. It was just total distortion. So being able to get to a place where I can actually relate to these things and regulate these things for myself, understanding kind of that the brain is just one part of like our nervous system, and that what really is deeply ingrained in us is more about being in our bodies, um, and leaning into this kind of new age spiritual approach to certain things. I think there's this like incredible overemphasis on like the upper chakras. And what I've realized is there's this bypassing of the lower ones, and the
Mm.
basement of the body is like where you get your wisdom, your shakti, your life force energy. It's your security, it's your creation, it's who you are, it's how you relate to that. And if
Mm.
you're working from like the waist up, the first class I'd ever taught was a shadow work master class, and I was like, you can't be worried about your third eye if your root chakra is like levitating. Like you need to be able to have a grounding, in security, but more importantly, like in yourself. So I think being able to discern with intuition is moving from a place as well, um, where I was able to really distinguish what was me, and what was a lot of kind of feedback from external things and core wounds and what were kind of like these pieces of the shadow that were just showing up, that
Yeah.
had a lot of dysregulation. So being able to really be in touch, and it really required like a level of transparency with myself. And I believe that like my intuition continues to strengthen itself the deeper I'm willing to go. Like, how intimate am I willing to be with myself? How vulnerable will I be with myself? And how much of myself will I expose in that way? Um, and not just for other people, other people relate to it, but there's this piece of like when you kind of like expose yourself and you're just like, hey, I'm integrated enough to share this with you, and this is what's going on, and it's crazy and it's hectic and it doesn't make sense, and people are like, I can't believe you would like share something like that, and it's like, the difference there is that I don't have the fear of what you're going to think. Like, no matter who I am, no matter what I do, people aren't going to like me no matter what. And that gets to be okay because I already know what it feels like to hate myself. Um, and if, as long as I'm not in that place, like if you like me, great, that's a bonus. If you don't like me, um, I'm allowed to like release that back to you in hopes that you heal that for yourself and you find a deeper connection with yourself and others. We're all mirrors. And if I don't allow hatred like here inside of me, then whatever is projected on me from the external world, whether it be a judgment or a criticism or whatever it is, I'm able to really transmute that. I'm really able to transmute that back with compassion. Um, and just be able to stay in that deep knowing regardless of the emotional charge that comes, and I can still communicate to other people, I can still make my decisions, and I can still process my feelings.
And that's embodiment. I was just so curious to know how, because embodiment, that word is just like, being used a lot right now. But it is, I mean, that's great. I mean, I think the more we can talk about everyone's relationships with their bodies and the callings of their bodies, um, that word just gets tossed around now. But I mean, like, that you just described it, being able to hold all of that and to the like holding the duality of your human experience in terms of like, sure, I can feel my nervous system is a little rattled right now and I'm shaking, but I'm also able to connect to like my infinite worthiness as a human being at the same time. And thank you for sharing your experiences. Like, I mean, I think that it's so important to share stories. I mean, like, I'm a storyteller and I help women tell their story. And so when you so vulnerably share that, I mean, someone listening is going to hear that and be like, I can do this. So it's just like it's so powerful to hear that. And um, I just watched this documentary this weekend called The Wisdom of Trauma.
Mm.
And it's with Gabor Mate, and he talks about addiction, and he talks about every all of us being traumatized, whether it's in a small way or a big way, and that's even like kind of a slippery slope to discuss because everyone's trauma feels like trauma to them, but he spoke through the lens of addiction in a lot of ways. I think you would love it. It's so good. I posted on my stories. I was like, everyone in the world needs to watch this documentary. It's so powerful, and just speaking about how, our nervous systems are programmed because they were operating from a place of, hey, we're going to do this right now because this is what's going to keep you safe right now as a child. And like how radical that is and how amazing that is. And rather than like belittling like the anxiety that you feel today or the self-doubt that arises or those thought patterns that do come through, it's like, yo, those kept you safe. Like they were there to keep you in a situation that was like not healthy for you, but get you through it, like. And so we can look at things like that, when we look at anything like that, like through the lens of self-love and like how powerful our bodies are, just their wisdom alone, without us even doing anything. Um, that is huge. So I'm all for the embodiment conversation. you know,
Always.
yeah, even though it's definitely being talked about a lot, it's kind of a personal experience, like feeling embodied. Um, and there's so many different things we can embody and so many different qualities we can embody, but it's what you just said. It's like it's being in your worth, even when you feel like there's voices or thoughts in your head telling you like, I'm scared or I can't do this.
100%. And I think that embodiment, we can focus our embodiment on certain things. And I think that I think there's a lot of words that can get thrown around that can be very distorted. Embodiment being one of them, even trauma being one of them.
Yeah.
Anxiety being one of them. And I think that we use them in these very blanket statements. Um, and I think that for the potency and like the power behind some of these words, there needs to be like a deeper reverence, and there needs to be like an embodiment of embodiment, like
Yeah.
there needs to be, because for me, so one of the teachers that I'm like getting involved working with, mind blowing, absolutely just brilliant human being, John Wineland.
Oh, I
He
love him.
speaks of, oh my God, love him, love him. And my fiance's been really kind of getting involved in understanding and getting into his work with me. So we're doing something together
So
with
cool.
John Wineland. So I'm so excited for that. But he speaks about embodiment, about really just bringing more of you into the world, and that
Yeah.
I think that like embodying yourself,
Yeah.
because embodiment of any one particular thing is almost like a bypass to kind of like hide ourselves.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yep. 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 Yep.
It's kind of like I'm embodying this mask, this costume. I'm embodying what you want to see,
Yeah.
rather than like how are you like embodied in yourself? How are you embodied in truth? Because when you're embodied in truth, there's no hiding. When you're embodied in yourself, there's no hiding. If you're looking to embody really anything else without that being the foundation, um, is that really authentic? And I think that that's the deeper work that some people really need to do. And I think that being clear with, is my embodiment congruent across the board? Because if I'm embodied in one area of my life,
Yeah.
and if I'm embodied when I'm in my business, or when I'm teaching, or when I'm recording an Instagram story, who am I when that camera goes away? Who am I when I'm alone? Who am I with my partner?
When
And
you're
that was a big,
triggered.
yeah. And I've been using the word activated to replace triggered, because like I've been feeling like resistance. I'm like, all right, like your trigger has a trigger, and like that needs to be healed. But like activation for me always sounds like invitation. Like it just
Yeah.
always sounds like invitation. And what I've realized really with myself is, in the moment that I am experiencing some level of trigger or activation, I'm really being invited to bring integrity, bring congruence, um, bring my practice like into fruition. And I think that that's so important, because a huge part of what I really try to bring into my teaching is also, when we talk about personal power, is it circumstantial? Because if you can, embody this level of emotional intelligence when all is well, that is fantastic. What do you do when like your life is on fire? Like, who are you when your life is on fire? There's no certainty, when something feels like it's falling apart, when you feel lost within yourself. Like, do you have that same ability to show up as the same person that can maintain their personal power, or are the circumstances now dictating who you're going to be? And if it dictates who you're going to be, then that's not personal power, and that's not embodiment.
Yeah.
And I can be known for some disruptive at times, or um, unpopular opinions, and it's never about bringing, how do I say it? It's never about like bringing shame, and it's never about trying to call people out on things. What it really is again an invitation to like really look deeper, like really, really look at yourself, be with yourself. And
Mhm.
if even the women that I've worked with, and the women that are in my programs, and when they feel a level of resistance, they can voice that. They can voice that with me, um, and I encourage them to. Like I will encourage someone, go out in the world and like literally get as triggered as you possibly can, and you will know exactly where the work is for you. And when you become aware, where you can almost anticipate the things that create that kind of activation in you, the areas that the embodiment needs to really integrate with. The areas where your personal power feels maybe a little bit flimsy, and you need to bring more, um, structure and more solidity into that, and it's almost like exposure therapy, right? Like, you voluntarily choose to walk into a situation that feels really disruptive for you, and you just kind of play in that field, in that area, um, even if that means just engaging in conversations that feel like wildly uncomfortable, and you just practice your communication in it.
I love that so much, and it's very similar to a type of therapy that I did for my panic attacks and for anxiety. And it was like, I feel so scared about being in a crowd. So my therapist was like, go be in a crowd. And I'm like, um, well, no, like, well, no, thank you. But, what we got to the root of for me was my symptoms, my physical symptoms of anxiety were so like disassociation, feeling very lightheaded. And so I would always be so, 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 so fearful that I was going to pass out or that, um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, like I would feel like so
Yes.
weak and I would have to like hold on to things. And I've never passed out in my life, but I would
Same.
get so scared of that happening to me that I would then be nervous about passing out. And so what I'm really scared of is passing out in front of people, which would then be embarrassing to me. So it was the fear of embarrassment that was triggering all of this for me. And it was like going to the mall and standing in that fluorescently lit open space with nothing to hold on to or grab onto if I did feel like I
Mm,
needed to, and standing there and feeling and witnessing that fear rise to the surface and almost inviting it to get louder was another anxiety coach that I worked with. And this has inspired my work a shit ton, where it's like, call that anxiety in and ask it to get as loud and as bad as it possibly can get, which to an anxious person or a person going through literally anything feels like, no, this is so painful and terrifying. And obviously, if anyone listening is experiencing this, do this with a practitioner. Like, do not try this on your own for the first time. It's a very, very vulnerable thing to do. But I'm like, "You want me to ask my anxiety to get worse? Are you crazy? Like, are you actually
mhm,
crazy?" Because on the other side of asking it to get worse, it can be free to calm down. Your nervous
mhm.
system can then settle. And, walking into these situations where you feel triggered, wow. I I'm almost like, okay, cool. I can wrap my head around the triggers and activations being portals for transformation and growth, like 100%. What would you say in those moments when you feel yourself, which it really is just like a loss of your personal power? Like you said, it feels flimsy. I can really feel into that. It does. What do you do then? What do you do when you're in that
Mm.
moment and it feels flimsy? What do you do?
So, one, I just want to say I completely relate to that crippling anxiety, of
Mm,
what's going to happen. I used to get these incredible panic attacks while I was driving. My
mm,
vision would get blurry, my hearing would go out. I would feel like I was going to pass out. Um, I've been a personal trainer for like years. So I used to wear a Fitbit. My heart rate would shoot up to like 200 BPM. And I thought I was going to crash my car and die. And for me, like the root um, was the unknown. The unknown was terrifying, and I needed to control things.
yeah.
And the more I resisted the anxiety, the more it amplified. And it was just like a
Yes.
feeling of just being totally unsafe and unpredictable. And God forbid something did happen, I could be embarrassed, but like I didn't trust people to actually take care of me if something
Yes.
happened, which was huge. So it was really a safety factor. And just,
That's it right there. Yeah.
yeah, it was wild for me as well. So I just want to hear you on that and validate that, how uncomfortable that is. And almost this feeling of like, oh my gosh, like, why is my body betraying me? Like
Mm.
it felt like this like internal betrayal. It was just like, why are you betraying me?
Yeah,
I
like,
don't
what's
want
wrong?
this.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah. And it made
broken.
me
There
feel
must
like
be
something
something.
was wrong with me.
Yes.
Completely.
Of
Completely.
course. Those sensations and symptoms are so loud and terrifying. How are you not
Mm-hmm.
supposed to think you're having a heart attack or, and yeah, totally.
100%. So to address your question, you know, know thyself. Know thyself. If you don't know yourself enough to know when you're walking into something and you feel that like it rises all of a sudden, the personal power is kind of like that plastic man blowing in the wind in front of like a car
Yes.
shop. And it's just like blowing
Yes.
everywhere.
I use that. I use the energy of that specific thing to describe things all the time. That's so funny you bring that up.
Yeah, it's so spot on for me of what kind of happens. So I mean, I want to just speak from my own experience with this when I kind of walk into something. So perfect example is like my fiance, incredible human being. His name is Patrick. We love him. He's like the greatest human ever. And I want to give like two really quick examples with this, because I believe it works in both directions, and it's just pretty incredible how the mind and the body work. So the first is Patrick will do something or say something, and I immediately feel the fire ignited. And it's like ignited deep within me yet again. And my initial reaction is snap, react, um, make some sort of snarky, condescending, passive aggressive comment, whatever it is. Um, Find some type of way to like sabotage the situation. Like maybe we shouldn't see each other right now, and like you should just leave and I'll just, go somewhere else. And like we don't have to be together right now. And not as far as like a breakup, but just like separating, rather than kind of sitting in that discomfort with it. So one thing that I've really worked with for myself is I'm like, there's a me, and then what we refer to like myself, right? It's like there's me and I'm claiming the self as me. I think of it as like, all right, there's two things happening here. There's kind of like this higher consciousness, the higher self, the love, the compassion, the depth, this being. The best way actually really that I want to describe this is there's a human and a being. There's a human and a being. And the being wants to be the piece that shines through. And what ends up happening is that the human has just been so distorted in this human world because of their wounding and their, trauma to whatever capacity. And when I speak about trauma, I really mean anything that activates pain or shame. Anything that activates pain or shame. And I don't, anything that's like within that spectrum, right?
Totally.
And I want to be clear for myself in those moments, is this a human or a being reaction? And it's always the human is just there with like the pitchfork ready to
Totally.
burn down the town every time. So I'm like, okay, we're having a superhuman reaction. So whatever I'm actually reacting to right now has nothing to do with him. It has to do with something that is not healed, not at the surface, not super conscious for me. And I maybe not in that moment, but like I'm aware that 95% of behavior is autopilot. So
Yeah.
I'm having an autopilot response. And I will at times kind of just take a minute, breathe, close my eyes, and just say, okay, the thought of the frustration that wants to react is here. And I'm behind it looking at it.
Yeah.
And the second I can create that separation, there's this just total sense of calm in my body. And I'm like, we're mad right now for no reason. This seems pretty silly. We should
Yeah.
probably let this go. And, there's an incredible coach. Her name's Melanie Ann Layer. And there was a training she did once. And I was thinking, it just brought this up. She said, we need to learn to forgive more quickly, because what happens is we allow one moment to ruin an entire day of joy, but we will never let joy
Mhm.
overpower that one moment that took place. And no matter what somebody does, or no matter what happens, and somebody's trying like, oh, bring you flowers, and it's like, oh, thanks, I'm just having a bad day. We become so committed. We become so committed because if we were to allow joy to overpower that, we would have to recognize that whatever it was that was brought up for us probably wasn't a big deal in the first place. And it would bring up some feeling of like shame, embarrassment, um, or like feeling kind of like, wow, why did I overreact in that way? So we want to stay justified in why we're being so activated. And instead of looking at ourselves, it's the finger pointed. And I've had a mentor who used to say, when you have a finger pointed at someone, there's always three pointed back at you. So in that moment, I really look and say, he's bringing up something for me. So what do I need to look at? And am I willing to do that? Or am I willing to hurt this person by the way I want to react in order to protect myself? And I always think of the statement, right? Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And it's not about being right and being happy. It's, do you want to be right or do you want to be safe? Because most people don't feel safe. Most people don't feel safe expressing themselves. Most people don't feel safe in a state of activation in that way. And I think that being able to check in and say, okay, we don't feel safe here. What do I need to feel safe in this moment? And I can, right? And can I express that to the person that I'm having a conversation with? And I think that this is where being able to establish boundaries, but not blocks, because boundaries is another word that gets thrown around often. And people are like, I blocked their phone number. I had to set a boundary. And it's like, no, 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 no. Making yourself unaccessible without voicing what was occurring for you and presenting a solution or invitation for that person to rise is not a compassionate boundary. You're blocking that so you don't have to look at why you're uncomfortable. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
So knowing how to establish a boundary in that moment, even saying to my partner, hey, what just took place felt like really intense for me. Would it be okay if we come back to this in a little while? Would it be all right if I just stepped away for a few minutes? Or can we continue this conversation another time? I feel like this is bringing up a lot for me, and I just want to take some time so that I don't say anything that I don't mean. I want to be able to come back to this with a clear mind, and asking for that space instead of needing to be safe in that moment, and projecting, which creates a bigger mess. So for me, walking into those moments, it's right. It's, can I establish and integrate that emotional intelligence in the forefront, that really starts with like knowing myself, right? Um, and that's like if something unpleasant feels like it's happening. The other thing that I would just touch on quickly is something that I've really been experiencing with my partner, and I had to do some like really deep reflection on this. It was pretty intense. I have a story in my mind from a young age that in order to receive love, there's something I have to do. And this goes back to this kind of disconnect or dissonance with my own inner polarity with things and ability to receive. And I had to look at my resistance. Like, why was it hard for me to receive? And why was it hard for me to receive like his love? Um, and in doing some deeper work, I realized like there was this resentment, this frustration, this rejection that I was not that I was getting out of his love, and the love felt unsafe. And I think that's something that's like just not spoken about enough. And sometimes I want to like shout it from a rooftop, like, if you've been traumatized, love can feel like a trauma response in your body. So if you find yourself in patterns of relationship where you literally crave and create the patterns of rejection and abandonment, love doesn't feel safe in your nervous system. And what I was realizing is I'm like in this relationship with this like beautiful human, and there's there loves all of my insecure, like loves everything about me. And I was feeling like I was getting really triggered. I was really activated by this. Like I was ready to walk away from my fiance a few weeks ago. And he's so awesome. Like he's just like, yeah, like talk about whatever you need to. Like it'll help somebody. Like I'm open. I know where we stand. So he's super solid in that. Um, I have his permission to kind of share about these things, but I was really resisting his love because I felt like there was something that I had to do in order to earn it. And because there wasn't something that I had to do, I couldn't just accept it. It felt really unsafe, and it was going against everything that I felt deeply about myself. And, what I realized is I can think that I have a lot of self love with things. And it's like, well, I don't think that like I hate myself. And it's like, it doesn't matter what you think, baby. Like, what does your body feel when somebody just tries to pour love into you? So that's another type of like trigger and activation where why am I so activated by something that should be a good thing? Why do I keep creating these patterns? And I don't like to say self-sabotage per se, but what is my need and my craving for chaos? Like,
Yeah.
why do I keep myself in this cycle? And I've heard people say like, yeah, if like I want to date the guy that's just like super toxic and this and that. And it's like, no, you don't want the guy that's super toxic. It's just that toxicity is what feels safe in your body.
It's familiar
Rejection
to
feels
you.
safe in your body. Yeah. And what I also experienced for myself was my partner wasn't giving me the rejection that I was using, that I was used to, or that I was anticipating. So I had to create it for myself by rejecting him. And that was a whole different world of being triggered or being activated in something with someone. And again, know thyself. Like this was like a huge layer for me to uncover. And once I was able to do that, like I was able to lay that over my business. I was able to lay that over anywhere else in my life, right? So when I don't experience rejection, how am I creating it for myself? And for me, this was a huge opportunity for just personal accountability. And I think that that's like a huge, huge piece for me is like, I need to be completely responsible for the quality of my life and the way that it is and the way that it looks. You know, we are all master manifestors. And I love manifestation. I do, but I don't practice it or teach it from a sense of, affirmations and journaling per se. I really do it from a space of like emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. Like if you don't know how to actually hold the frequency in your nervous system, it's not about being in a high vibe. Um, you're going to start to create that. And what I was realizing is the manifestation of this relationship just being really integrated for me, even after the few years we've been together, was still creating resistance because my nervous system wasn't accepting that love. So I had to really spend time leaning into that. And there were days that like he wanted to, once this kind of became aware for me, um, going into those situations with him and like allowing him to like hug me, I would just start crying and just bawling. And that was a whole other level of activation. So surrendering into the vulnerability of accepting the thing that you truly desire to feel, even when you resist it and it doesn't make sense. Like once you become aware of that, like allowing yourself to be loved and allowing yourself to receive is possibly like the most intimate and vulnerable thing you're ever going to do without feeling like there's something that you have to do to earn it. Oh my gosh.
Oh
Oh
my
my gosh.
gosh.
Like if there was something that like if there was anything that I could say to like teenage me, it would be there is nothing you have to do in order to receive. And receiving things and experiencing life doesn't have to be difficult. You don't need to make it difficult for yourself.
Oh my gosh. I can like feel my nervous system being like, this is the medicine right now because it's so true. And I can't even imagine how really integrating that would translate into other areas of your life and your business and just truly such a surrendered place, and thank you for sharing those examples in your own relationship because relationships are such incredible containers for growth. And it sounds like you guys are in a position to feel safety even amongst the chaos. And I
Hmm.
think that's a really beautiful place and foundation. It's a very necessary place, that your emotional experience can be held in a way, um, which is that's some conscious man stuff, you
It
know,
is.
and like it's really really beautiful. It's beautiful in friendship, it's beautiful in every department. It's just it's so beautiful, like to be detached from the outcome of the experience almost, and just to be so present in the your whatever it is that your activated state or your emotional state is being held energetically by another person. Like that is the most healing thing in the world. That is the most healing thing in the world. And that is like also the same thread of like receiving love without doing anything. Like you can be fully seen and express your needs, because it sounds like you're at this place where you're like, actually, would it be okay if we talked about this again in a minute, or I'm going to step away, or would this be okay, versus just like running.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that requires a lot of work to get to that place. It's all so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I needed to hear a lot of that. And I kind of want to circle back to this moment of you talking about like the focus on like the upper chakras, and really needing to get into the lower chakras. And I have had a very interesting experience over the past like couple of years being in a relationship and having these men come through that are very, very wonderful in so many ways. Like um checking all the boxes. You know what I mean? Like the quote unquote boxes, and like being all of these things that I really like, but they're just clearly they're not being something, me being shown what it is that I really, really want on a deeper level, because it wasn't necessarily there for me. Um, and my body being the one to tell me that first, and me being like, wow, this is a very interesting experience, and feeling physical sensation. I don't even know if I can call it like pain. I don't know, but like in my like sacral chakra, like my belly. And I'm just like, I have never felt this in my life. Cause we hear about gut feelings all the time. It's like gut feeling, gut feeling, gut feeling. And that to me feels more of like a nervous system feeling, like at my solar plexus, that feels a little bit more nervous system-y to me. This felt like physical, like, whoa, like in my sacral. And I was just like, it's just been an interesting exploration of like that deep body wisdom and being like, well, why is this happening? But they're so great, you know? And then it's like, is there something wrong with me where I can't hold this or receive this or whatever? And so it's a very nuanced conversation of like, that's why I bring up the relationship that you're in, and that this container, you're describing it as like, there's clearly so much emotional safety there. So it's kind of like the fear and intuition conversation where
Hmm.
it's like, how do we distinguish the two, where it's like, be in the relationship and stay in the relationship and be like doing the work and being vulnerable and open and sharing and growing and all of that, or like, but it's still painful throughout that time. It's painful there. But then there's like the other side of the coin where it's like, well, maybe that relationship isn't right. And then how do we even that like deep, deep discernment, like that has been just like something in
Yeah.
my life lately.
Yeah, I love this. I love it. The two examples with like walking into something that's triggering or activating was really the example of him doing something as like an external activation or trigger, which is it's still always in me, versus him doing something really pleasant and me internally. So it's like the difference for me of like an internal and an external activation with things. And I feel like that also circles kind of into what we're saying with this here is, you know, what's initiating the feeling in you? Is it something inside of you, or is it something that's unpleasant coming in from them? Um,
Yeah.
the thing about relationships is like we think we get into relationships to like meet needs of like safety and family and procreation, if that's on your list, or compatibility and love and monogamy or whatever it is. And really, like, you get into a relationship without knowing it sometimes is to learn about yourself.
Mm.
There's no greater teacher of like who you are than watching yourself in a relationship with somebody, right? And like the first 6 months for me of a relationship at this point in my life, and just the insanity and toxicity of like past relationships at times for me, um the
Yeah.
first 6 months for me just don't even count, because you're just so enamored by this other person, and the polarity is still there, is still strong. And then like 6 months in a day, somewhere between 6 months and a year, these creepy crawlies start popping up like whack-a-mole. And you're like, whoa, what's happening? And that's when you really start to just see and experience a person in a different way. And I'd always joke, like I turn any red flags I see, I'm just going to turn it into like a scarf, like it's going to be a fashion statement. Um and so this is really something that was yeah, so this was something that was really brilliant. And it's funny, I was just listening to something by John Wineland the other day, and it literally created a snowball effect of me having just like these breakthroughs that popped like popcorn in my life with relationships. He said, he was on a podcast, and he said, beware of the spark that you experience at the beginning of a relationship.
Yeah.
He said, because that spark is your nervous system saying, oh, I'm home. Here is everything that I've experienced that is going to activate every unhealed part of me. And what I realized is, interestingly, I always thought like, there was this point in my relationship now with Patrick where I was like, maybe he's not the one. I didn't feel a spark, but he loves me so much. In every other relationship, like the, relationship previous to this, I felt a spark. And like when I tell you that like I was emotionally steamrolled, like I was just bulldozed in that relationship, but like the spark was there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that really was just such an activating realization for me in that, and being able to lean in. And what I'm realizing in relationship is that it all comes back to polarity, regardless if you are a man and a woman or a same-sex relationship, or somebody doesn't choose to have a gender identification. Whatever it is, there's somebody that embodies um, more of like the yin feminine pole or the yang masculine pole. And what I've realized for myself is that Patrick checks the boxes, but the yin inside of me, the feminine in me, was so, and I've been using the word distorted a lot, and because there's just so much distortion, I believe, for humans at times. There was just this like real confusion internally where like I wouldn't even give him the opportunity to lead because I was not willing to give up the control and really, this might be an activating word for some people, but like submit in the relationship. And that doesn't mean that there is not equality. It doesn't mean that he tells me what to do or that I'm, cooking dinner and sweeping floors.
Right.
But basically that I have a level of trust to allow myself to be in full expression with this person, because he is able to embody a level of depth and consciousness that that evokes a feeling of safety in me,
Yeah,
where I'm
just you
able to
saying
be
those
there.
words, like, I feel safety in my system. Just the way you
Mhm.
described, I was like,
Yeah.
safety. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I think that when we look at relationship through the lens of polarity, it can be, for some people, like a really rude awakening in understanding why some relationships don't work. One of the most profound things I've ever really learned in relationship, especially around polarity and energetics, is emotional intelligence, energetics, and embodiment is the foundation of any of my work, anything that I do, anything that I mentor with. And energetically, I took on a very mothering role for people and wanting to take care of, and that came back to childhood stuff with dad, because Freud is just always correct. No matter what I do in life, Freud is just always right. And that came back to like a mothering, wanting to take care, wanting to make something right. It also came from self-worth, self-esteem, needing to fix. It translated in my business and holding and being very hand holding with things. And I had to create my own boundaries with that. But what I realized in relationship is we as, for me as a feminine being, I have such a fear of experiencing disappointment and rejection and all these other things. And I will not give my partner a chance to actually create a container for the relationship that feels safe and sturdy and secure. So, what I do is I try to overpower that by mothering them. And in me mothering them, what I'm really doing is I'm evoking this childlike energy from them. And the piece that was so really mind blowing for me and really profound when I learned this was that mothering energy is the masculine side of feminine energy. Like we would think like being a mother is like the most womanly thing you can do. And it's like actually like the most masculine thing that a woman can do is be a mom. There's nothing sexy about coming between a mama bear and her cubs. There's
Right.
also nothing sexy for a guy about his mom.
Yeah.
And what I realized is when I get into mothering energy with my partner, I'm evoking childlike energy, which is inherently um, is more of a yin feminine energy. And I was so frustrated because I couldn't just snap that polarity back when I wanted to be in a different dynamic within the relationship. And I had to look at um my own fears around that. And the other part was that was really mind-blowing for me was when we think of like, what it means to be like very manly and masculine. It's like they don't talk about, it's like, oh, guys don't talk about their feelings. Guys don't have like this emotional capacity, or when a guy gets angry and he's like, punching holes in the wall and throwing chairs, and they're like, oh my gosh, he's just, boys will be boys. When a masculine being is in a state of rage or anger and screaming and yelling, and his eyes are bulging and he's throwing things and punching holes in the wall. Um, just a disclaimer, if that takes place in your relationship, that's abuse, please leave. But
Yeah.
that is the most feminine that a masculine being will ever be, because
Mm.
they are completely out of control with their emotions. Their emotions have owned them. And in a
Yeah.
masculine being, the depth to be able to hold not just their feelings and emotions, but their counterpart, their feminine counterpart, um, is really their role is to just have this depth of consciousness and to just emit and pour out love. And the thing is that, for somebody who desires to have a masculine counterpart, whatever, however you identify, regardless of gender or any of that, um, you know, when we say like, there's no good men out there, there's like, and it's like, no, they're everywhere and they want to take care of us. They want to do that, but they need to be able to do that independent of our need to try to control them because of our own unhealed stuff. Like they will hold the container for us to be there and go through our chaos. Like, the feminine isn't just soft, like it's also, it's the flowing lake and it's also the tsunami,
Yes.
it's a breeze and it's also a freaking tornado. And
Totally.
being able to have someone to hold you within that spectrum, of your expression as a feminine being is a beautiful thing. But we need to be able to do that without the tsunami trying to crash down the mountain.
Mm.
Because when I'm in my mothering, my need for control, when I'm reacting from a space of like wounding or being hurt, um, I'm literally killing the polarity there. And polarity is what creates magnetism. Polarity is what creates the attraction, like magnets. So even when I speak to friends or people who have been in relationships where their partner was unfaithful and I'm looking at it through the lens of polarity, I'm just like, and I don't believe in infidelity, and I don't support it per se, but it's like it is possible to mother a partner into somebody else's arms. It is possible to do that. And when I look at it from energetics, it's just like this is primal energy just seeking attraction with that. And, just kind of tying this all into what you were saying in your body is I want to preface it with that kind of discussion of polarity, because when you're able to feel that inside of you and you're able to really tune in to where do I fall within this spectrum of polarity, because I can be out and working and be in the world and teaching and whatever and just be super outward giving yang, in my inner masculine, but like when I'm with my partner, he doesn't need me to be there unless I want to feel like I'm raising my man. And that's not my job. It's also not what I want to do. I don't want to raise my man. I had somebody once say to me, like, sometimes you need to like raise, your man a little bit. And it's like, no wonder the polarity is dead in that relationship. I'm
Mm.
not here to raise him. And when I was able to see that, I was actually able to witness for me, how a lot of my behavior was emasculating. And I can just call it for what it is and be like, no, that was completely like castrating to him, um, to not honor what he was actually capable of. And when I witnessed that, I was like, wow, this is the depth and the love and the magnetism that I've been craving in a relationship. And it's never been him. So again, it was like me being able to really look in myself. And when I look at the relationships that I've been in the past and tuning into that inner sacral feeling, I don't know if you are familiar with like using like human design, like I'm a sacral generator. So my sacral is kind of what tells me, kind of like my yes or no's for life. Like that's where I get a lot of feedback from. I also believe that that is like the seat of like birth of wisdom, of knowledge, of creation. And even if that is creating a relationship, I feel like that feeling is, there's something you're seeing in this person now, yes, but there's something energetically that is not resonating. It's not in resonance, with
Totally.
the energy that they're carrying. And when I try to logically make sense of, like you said, like they check the boxes, It's like they can check like the logical boxes, but do they check the energetic boxes?
That's like all I needed to hear. And I read this quote like a little while ago about the right people in your life will feel like you'll feel it in your nervous system. And I think that that is it's amazing. And isn't it so funny how we can just seek validation so deeply and like be disconnected from our own self-trust by being just like, why not just trust the feeling in your body, So it's all been so incredible. Thank you so much for everything that you're sharing. I didn't think we were going to go this deep into relationships, but I am here for it.
It encompasses, one thing I will say is like even like with my work, right? A root and branch really started as this idea of a tree's roots reaches out just about as far as the branches, and who I am as an individual and my relationship to myself is going to reflect the relationships that I have with others and with life as a whole. So if the roots are good, the branches are good. I
Yeah,
need to be good if I want to have that goodness experience in the rest of my life. And whether it's my relationships, not just with um, my partner, but like relationships with clients, my relationship with family, friendships, my relationship to my body, to food, to money, to movement, to source, to spirit, to whatever it is. Like we are in relationship to everything,
totally.
but it all starts with me. Um, so anything that like I'm even sharing when it comes to polarity in relationships is actually applicable to polarity in and emotional intelligence with my relationship applies to my relationship to money. It applies to my clients. It applies to literally every single thing in life, including myself. And I think that when I initially kind of created like the logo for a root and branch, it's like an upside down triangle, which was just representative of like the yin, the feminine, and it's the flower of life. Like every single thing we do is going to create a ripple effect. And I believe so much in universal law. And that's really how I integrate and understand like manifestation on an energetic level. So we create our realities. And I think there needs to be a deeper level of conversation and a more conscious collective of facilitators, space holders, coaches, mentors, leaders who are willing to invite people um, into what they're bypassing to really bring more depth and more consciousness and more difficult conversations so that we have a healthier community of people who are invested in self development and self growth and leadership and mentorship, but in a way that is really in deep integrity um, to the collective and to
Totally.
themselves, you know? So everything we talked about, we went down like all the rabbit holes. But anything that like we spoke about today can just be applied in any individual's area of life, no matter what it is. It's congruent to everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it is so true because it's all nervous system experience, whether it's a
Hmm.
relationship with money, a relationship with, your relationship with money is like, do you feel like, can your nervous system even hold seeing that the numbers go up in your bank account? Or are you so scared of there not being any in there? It's like, it's a nervous system gripping, and it's same with relationships, same with so many other departments of life. So it's exactly right. I mean, I love this like looking at it through the lens of polarity and the masculine and the feminine and yes to John Wineland's work.
Mm.
Yes, yes, yes,
He's
yes,
so
yes.
good. He's so good. And the biggest thing I've even learned um with money, that I would just say for anybody that's diving into that, give your money a name and then ask your money what it's like to be in a relationship with you.
Yes.
Because what I've realized for most people is, and this also translates to business, is like if my story about men is they always leave, they're not good enough, they never give me enough love, they don't pay enough attention to me, they don't meet my needs. My story about money is that there's never enough, it always leaves, it doesn't meet my needs, it doesn't give me as much as I need from it. And I'm constantly trying to control and mother my money. Probably doesn't want to be in a relationship with me. Same thing with my clients.
Yup. Yes. That's such a
Yeah.
deep question. I feel like I just heard that the other day and I was like, "Oh man, I got to sit with that." I got to sit with that
Yeah,
one. I love it so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your stories and your experiences. Where can we
absolutely.
find you on the internet?
So you can find me over on my Instagram page. My handle is of root and branch. I have pretty much the same like picture across all um, platforms. I'm on Clubhouse. I'm on Instagram primarily, and there's always like an email option there, so you can always reach out, ask questions, whatever it is. But I am always there and happy to connect.
I love that. That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And you're offering one-on-one, or are you doing a group coaching? What's your thing right now?
So I have one-on-one options open and available. And right now, I'm just kind of recalibrating into my next group offerings. I've done a few, and I'm just kind of allowing the next thing to come through.
Yeah.
But I think it's just expanding more to bring in a lot of what we've spoke about today.
Yeah.
Um, and the way I also think about it kind of is like my business is my boyfriend and it has its own vision. And I just totally surrender to what it wants to do, and it will let me know when it's my time to come in and create something. So I'm
100%.
allowing it to birth whatever's next.
I feel the exact same way. I feel like I wrote a post about this when I was like celebrating 3 years of Get a Helmet, and I was like, she is her own entity. And when
Hmm.
something is coming through and she wants to speak it to the world, it will be spoken, and I just kind of sit back. So
Yeah.
I it's so liberating to have that kind of relationship. So yes, I feel you, and thank you so much for this conversation.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much to Victoria of Root and Branch for being on the show, for sharing her wisdom, for sharing her stories so vulnerably and her experiences so vulnerably. I gained so much from this conversation. Please go follow her on Instagram of Root and Branch. And you can join us on Instagram live this week if you want to hear a little bit more. You can just follow me over on Instagram at @helmet_ and figure out what time we will be going live. I think it'll be on like the 8th or so. But come hang out. Come move with us, come dance with us, come learn. And I am so grateful, as always, to have you as a member of this community. And if you were listening to this episode, take a little screenshot, tag me, and I would be so honored to reshare that and just spread the message and spread the love of the podcast and everything we're talking about on the podcast. So have a beautiful day. Happy July. Can't believe it's July. And I love you so much. I will see you very soon. Bye.